Hello and welcome back to the Medewi campaign. Last time we started our war with the Tomeic Empire, walking right past their armies to take two of their settlements, but those armies we walked past came to attack the stuff we'd left behind. Luckily we were somewhat prepared. We had an army under a new commander, Ozilkis, full of levies and mercenaries, and it was able to hold the Egyptians off in a river battle where we struggled to win at first, but then once they routed, destroyed basically all of their army. Then Arrakkamani accidentally ambushed another Egyptian main force while he was preparing to attack Alexandria, and in the blink of an eye that army was wiped out. Now, a consequence of our strategy of rushing towards Alexandria is that a small Egyptian force takes down our virtually non-existent garrison at Memphis and doesn't actually recapture it. What they do is liberate a new faction called Tamahoo there, another Egyptian faction, and that's quite interesting because they're not the Tomeic Empire basically, and that's going to work to our advantage. They are allied to them and they start at war with us, but they do want to get peace with us. So that's actually going to work in our favour quite well. So this is basically going to create a peaceful border for us that we can come back to look at later, because we do of course want to take Memphis. This is just buying us some time and still denying the Tomeic Empire, our real enemy, the resources of the settlement. So that's all well and good. They accepted the deal. I didn't really press them too hard for anything else. And now we'll move back to Arrakkamani, who is going to continue putting the pressure onto Alexandria. And we can do quite a nice move here because the survivors of the guys we ambushed last time were standing next to the city. So by going to attack them, the entire garrison of Alexandria is going to be brought out to fight. So now we have a chance to kill as many of them as possible outside of the walls, making any potential city assault much easier. So as the fight started, I split my army into two groups. First, a group that was prioritizing taking down their main force. Basically, we don't care about the actual army, but we might as well kill it while we're here. And the other army first was having a look at this curious situation. We've got some classic early Rome 2 hangovers, perhaps, some mysterious water on the map. I wanted to test whether it was passable and such, and it seemed to be pretty good. Our men can just go and stand in it, and they can breathe underneath it, so that is all well and good. We can just pretend the water isn't there. Basically it's just a graphical glitch rather than an actual map glitch. So the attack against the enemy's main army begins. I'm using the phrase main army very loosely. There's barely any troops at all. They're just the official forces of the Empire, and they're not going to be much of a problem. Really, we're focusing on these guys, the garrison coming in from the west side of the map, so most of our army is now going to turn to face them, and we're probably going to be fighting them inside the watery square, so we'll see how that goes for our troops. Now we do have to face an enemy general who has these heavy shock cavalry who would of course annihilate pretty much any of the lightly armoured units in our army. Luckily they're not very enthusiastic with their charge. They just kind of trot up, take a load of javelins and then try and get away again, taking even more javelins, so we were able to take out that unit without it doing any damage. Very nice. They also have some hoplites who, again, theoretically good against us. They could defeat all of our guys in melee, but we can surround them, we can rain javelins on them from multiple angles. Basically that'll be fine, and a few cavalry take out all of the supporting missile troops as well. Now the action then is going to switch back to look at the garrison army, where I'm kind of holding off from engaging them right now because we want to totally surround them as much as possible. Since our objective here is to completely eradicate this army, not just defeat it, we want to defeat it in such a way that when units rout, they can't easily escape, we can easily chase them down. So we get a pretty good position with a nice surround, trying to get men behind them so their path back towards the city is blocked. They of course can just attack us to get this battle started and force something to happen, and their troops are going to be decent. They've got loads of Greek-style troops that can form hoplite phalanx, and that means they're going to be pretty strong. Our weapons probably won't do any damage to them at all, our melee weapons that is. All of their lighter units, they were exposed at the back, so we're just first hacking away at all of the low-level archers they brought and the sort of townspeople, the terrible units that are easy to kill, just to lower the enemy's army morale, while we gradually surround all of the heavier units and try and get into a position where we can go on an offensive against their morale, basically, because that's going to be their weakness. They're not very high-level units, so although probably decent in melee in comparison to us, they can be routed, and in many cases we get awkward situations like this where the phalanx are all facing weird directions and it's nice and easy to rear attack them. Here's a nice clean rear attack going off, and you can see what the enemy do is to try and escape the rear attack, kind of push forwards into our men, and that's probably going to break up the phalanx a little bit. You can see their morale basically just being taken down by all of these outflanking maneuvers. And as these units rout, we'll now try to inflict as much damage as possible. You can see some of them routing not in the direction I expected, so not towards the city. So that means these archers are going to have to go into melee and use whatever they can to damage these men. They might do it eventually, so we'll just leave them to it. And as the enemy start to shatter, they are left with what is basically a nuke box. They've got a big square of hoplite phalanxes facing all different directions, and that's keeping us out. A pretty decent formation, but it wasn't complete. The thing about a nuke box is it has to be complete. It has to have no weaknesses, otherwise it doesn't work. And one of the corners of the box wasn't fully defended, so we were able to get rear and flank attacks on some of the units, and that's going to begin rolling the box up basically as unit by unit routes. We can just go around attacking them all in the back, and that routes everything soon enough. The job is pretty much done. Then the majority of those troops are now going to be killed as they try and escape. They do seem to most actually push through our men, so we're going to have to chase after them for a while. And again, we'll have the problem where our troops don't do that much damage in melee, so it's actually hard to even kill routing troops because of the enemy's armor values. But of course we have a lot of time. They're routing in a direction that means they'll be running for a long time before they leave the map. So slowly but surely we'll kill as many of them as possible, or as many of them as I can be bothered to sit and watch through, and that's going to be a victory, massively weakening the garrison at Alexandria, meaning the capital of the Tomeic Empire could be in huge trouble here. So the question is going to be, did we kill enough of that garrison to make this super easy, or will it just be really easy? We got basically all of the army and basically all of the garrison. One cavalry unit escaping there at half strength. Not too bad. That's not going to cause much of a fuss. I'll release the captives to try and make the locals like me, because they're not going to like me after our next little move here. We need to attack the city. It's not going to be an absolute walkover, because they do still have a garrison fleet and an actual bit of a fleet hanging around, but the balance bar tells the story of that. They don't have much of a chance, so we'll just break our way in with the auto-resolve. Easy peasy, and that means the capital of the Tomeic Empire is now going to be falling to the good King Arrakkamani. His plan to march his way up to the Mediterranean has succeeded, and we've taken one of the great cities of the ancient world. And all with relatively few losses, actually, considering all the armies and territory had to move through to get here. So the question is, what does this mean for our strategic situation? We're now totally surrounded by hostile parties, as you can see. The Tomeics in particular surround Alexandria's region on 3 sides there, so it's not exactly a safe capture, but the walls will make it nice and easy to defend at the very least. Plus, I can now upgrade to the next tier of troops. We have this generic unit called Ethiopian Medium Infantry, which is better than our Painted Warriors, and they're going to make a better main line unit, so we'll try and upgrade to them as much as possible and as much as we can afford. Not much happened for a while, so a few turns later we finally saw some action when Osselkeys took his now slightly upgraded army to attack the final Egyptian region in the Egyptus province. No problems just taking it from the weak garrison, and that's just going to make it easier for us to control the province. Public order is still going to be abysmal, but this is going to buy us more room to work with, and we can convert some of the local stuff over, especially focusing on getting extra food, because this now should allow us to tax the province without it causing any food problems across the rest of our territories. Indeed we can, and they basically hate us so much that taxing them doesn't really matter. They're going to rebel basically whatever happens, so we might as well take the extra money, so there we go. You might be wondering what the Tomeics were actually doing during all of this time, and the answer is pretty much nothing. They were just wandering around. They still had the armies that we saw before just in the area around Memphis, but they basically weren't doing anything, and because of that, and because they were so far away from us right now, I realized we could take a sneaky opportunity to attack their new capital. They moved their capital basically to the next port west down the coast, and Arrakkamani happens to have enough movement points to just go and attack it right now. garrison isn't good enough to stop him, so we'll always resolve them to death and capture the settlement. However, we don't necessarily want to occupy this because it's in a new province, and because we're already going to have trouble just holding down Egyptus as a province. We don't want to basically try and start anything over here, start any new territory, so we're going to liberate a faction that was available here. It's called Mamorike or something like that. I can't actually read the text on the screen, by the way, because I'm commentating on a super blurry preview for anyone who was wondering. Anyway, the liberation there is basically buying us a peaceful border, so we're not really going to gain all that much from this, but just having this little Egyptian faction not be at war with us will be nice. It just takes the pressure off other fronts, and we can trade with them, so that will be good, and we can even get them to pay for the privilege because they really want to trade with us, and I can actually take them for everything I'm allowed to ask. I couldn't ask for any more money than that, and they were already willing to pay that amount, so it's a shame. I guess we just took all of their money and they were fine with that. So very nice. Overall, that was a nice little expedition, got us a new ally and some extra money and some extra safety. A bit more safeties on the way, actually, as you can see, because we managed to get peace with one of the random factions off to the west that Egypt called into the war. I had to pay them a tidy amount, but I was happy with that, just did it without even negotiating it. So there we go. However, it's followed up by some bad news. Arrakkamani is suddenly the victim of an assassination attempt by some other politician within our own faction. So now he is out of action. He wasn't killed, he was only wounded. He'll be wounded for 1 year as a result of this. So I need to replace him with a temporary commander, and I'm going to very creatively just pick the first person in the list because it doesn't necessarily matter who does it. It's just going to be someone who sits there until Arrakkamani comes back, although he may actually have to face some action because the Tomeic army looks like it's moving up towards Alexandria again. So I'm going to move the army just over to sit outside the city just in case they do come over and start anything. But what I did was put them in ambush stance, thinking maybe if they do attack we'll take them out before they arrive. But they did attack and we didn't take them out before they arrived, obviously. I think they detected the ambush, just walked right past it and started a siege. They didn't attack though, because the presence of our force probably makes that a really hard assault for them, so they're not actually going to do it. So I'm pretty happy to just leave them doing that siege because I'll take attrition the whole time. We've got forces inside and outside that will probably prevent them from trying to attack because it will look too difficult, and we'll just wait for Arrakkamani to come back. Basically in 2 more turns he'll be available, so if we do have to fight that army, you want to do it with Arrakkamani to get all the various bonuses he provides. And there's a quick look at the politics. You can see we don't have a majority, we don't have majority control over our own faction because there are other influential politicians around, including Ozilkeys and a few other random politicians who have somehow gained a lot of influence doing who knows what. So anyway, we now need to take out these Egyptian armies. It looks like they were coming down towards our territories in the south, but they weren't bringing many forces, and it just so happened that Ozilkeys was in range to attack them right now. We do have to trespass against Tamahoo, and they're probably going to be really annoyed about that. However, I thought it was worth the opportunity to kill these armies just in case they realised they were making a mistake. If they saw that we were defending the border, they probably would have ran away. So that was a nice chance to kill them, and it worked out pretty well. We'll release the prisoners. Maybe that'll make the locals at Tamahoo like us a little bit more and not declare war on us. That didn't work, clearly, because they declared war on us pretty soon. They actually managed to get back out of their territory before they did, so no surprise attacks or anything. I can call my ally in and they join, so that's all well and good. So this is going to be something we need to be concerned about, basically, because if they come and join the Tomeics besieging Alexandria, that could be a pretty formidable force. Plus, Ozilkeys' army gets a plague at a very inopportune time, so if they want to attack to the south instead, they're now going to face a weakened force. So we just need to know what they're doing. So our scout's going to try and find out, and it does look like they're coming south. I think that army was in the settlement previously and it's moved a little bit towards us. So I'm going to take this force back to sit on the river where it famously defended previously, and just wait to see what the enemy do. And we're going to continue letting the siege of Alexandria carry on until the next turn, when finally Arrakkamani will be able to come back. The first challenge, remembering how you actually do this thing where you switch the generals over, eventually found it, and then the question will be, can I find him in the list of generals? There was another guy who looked exactly the same as him available there, just to make things extra difficult. Luckily he was actually just off the screen. There he is. So we can bring him in, and that's going to add all of his various command bonuses back to our army to make him more powerful. I can give him a new bodyguard unit with cavalry to make him better as a unit. Now we've got a rebellion near Alexandria, which we're going to ignore for now because we want to apply our full force against the enemy's main force. and it actually looks pretty easy. With the army coming out from Alexandria as a garrison, the balance bar is super far in our favour, and I kind of thought that balance bar looks like it's too far in our favour considering the quality of the enemy's army, but I decided not to look the gift horse in the mouth and just take the auto-resolve win, although it wasn't all that good. We did take a lot of casualties there, so I think the balance bar was just being a bit generous in its representation of that fight. But anyway, it's happened now, and the fight against the rebels that comes after is going to be much easier, of course. It will take them down. Arrakkamani has basically cleared up all the business around Alexandria as soon as he returned. This king knows how to get things done, although he almost died in the process. You can see his unit's been cut down to just a few men after all that. Very dangerous indeed. He's putting himself right on the front line, apparently. Now we can move back to just stand on the road from Alexandria moving south, just in case there's an attack. I could have sat inside the city, which gives you a tiny bit more replenishment, but it makes the locals hate you basically because you're sitting in their houses in this case, so we're not going to do that for now. In the next turn, we discover that Tamahoo actually didn't move south to attack us as we thought they might be going to. So now we have to work out what we're going to do with this. They did make the right choice, because if they had moved down south, Arrakkamani could have just swept Memphis away and destroyed them. So that was the right decision from them, and we can still potentially attack them because they're fortified outside of the settlement up there. If we attacked the settlement, they would come in as reinforcements and be very vulnerable. But I'm actually going to try and do something else. I'm going to go into an ambush position in a nearby forest near Alexandria. The hope here is that they'll forget we exist and go back to their plan. I think they only came back to defend because they saw Arrakkamani, so now if he disappears, they may actually go south and allow us to take the settlement without having to fight them at the same time, which will make life easier. But similar to the last time I tried to do an ambush, I accidentally get an ambush because they change their plan and instead go to attack Alexandria, walking right past us on the way, and we get this ambush. It looks a little bit harder than the last ambush we fought because the enemy's army is higher quality. They got tons of pikemen and fewer of the lesser, lighter troops than previously, so balance bar not all that far in our favour, but we're not going to miss this opportunity. The ambush deployment zones prevented us from deploying right next to the enemy as we did previously. Instead, we're further away but up a hill for the most part. That allows us to use these fireball attacks, which are pretty powerful, actually wrecking some of their troops there. Only problem is they keep going, and we have troops further down the hill, which now have to very quickly try and dodge these things as they suddenly appear. Not completely successfully either, so we killed a couple of our own men, unfortunately. Still, we'll quickly settle the score as we attack the back of the enemy's army where all the lighter troops are. They have lots of native townspeople troops, basically mob who will just be defeated by anything, so we can just completely swamp them with tons of units and quickly take them down. I was actually surprised by how long it took for these guys to break. I assumed they'd have no morale, and once being surrounded by superior units they would just leave, but they did fight for a little bit. Not a huge problem anyway. Now they have lots of heavy troops in their army, lots of pikemen, and we're just kind of staying away from them right now, staying up the hill as much as we can, so they'll have to make a very slow advance towards us. We're hitting them with arrows and javelins half the time, so we'll be able to thin them out a bit, buying us lots of time to maneuver and just try and surround the whole army, and you can see we've pretty much got everything surrounded. Those troops at the back starting to disappear now as we advance forwards to take on these slightly harder troops, like these ones who can form hoplite phalanxes and the like, but of course not immune to being surrounded, in fact very weak against it. And in cases where the enemy's pike phalanx finds our men, I'm just going to fall back. We're just going to stay away from the pike phalanx basically and keep it moving around, because it's moving so slowly it's probably not going to catch us by surprise at all. Meanwhile, once we have pike units that are near loads of our own units, we'll just surround them and attack them with so much stuff that their morale can't possibly hold. Here this guy just jabbing an axe right through an enemy soldier. Very powerful for us there. So yes, we can attack these guys in such a way that they can't avoid being rear flanked. They don't like it and break, and now they're just going to be eaten up. They will be destroyed by the units now surrounding them. So we'll just try and do this to each phalanx, one phalanx at a time, by drawing them apart from each other and not giving battle until we're in a position to totally surround them and do a devastating attack as much as possible anyway. Here's another case, just attacking a unit from all sides at once. They're turning to face the first attack, but it doesn't do them any good when a whole load more guys come in for the rear attack. Pikes seem to try and push forwards when you rear attack them, but that breaks their formation and gives them another morale debuff. Don't know if you saw that, but I think some guy just went flying off into another dimension there. Anyway, we're sealing the deal, completely surrounding them as another unit comes in. They're going to try and escape, not going to happen. They're going to lose a whole unit of pikemen there. This is such a satisfying trade. We're losing basically nothing and taking out these heavy units one by one, and the enemy can't do anything about it. They're too split up. These pikes need to be standing in a continuous line on their own. They are weak against attacks like this. The only thing working in their favour is that many of my troops are themselves kind of weak, so can't really exploit those rear attacks as much as they could. This little unit of spears looks pretty confident sitting in its hoplite phalanx, but it's completely surrounded by my men who are just basically sizing it up, getting ready for the attack. Eventually, just bandbox select everything, tell them all to charge at once. These guys in big trouble, instantly completely surrounded. That's going to be loads of flank attack morale debuffs hitting them at once. It causes the unit to rout, and that unit will now simply disappear. You just can't see it anymore. It's gone. It's now somewhere in that big blob of our troops, losing all of its men, and the enemy army now is shattered due to army losses. We've killed enough of them that they don't want to even try and fight, and that's actually going to be the wrong choice, because we're not going to let them leave. We are going to cut them down and try and destroy as many of the heavy troops as we can here. Our troops just casually strolling in to take part in this slaughter. Eventually they'll get a little bit more into it. We're going to take out tons and tons of this army as it escapes. That's a decisive victory. Exactly what we needed. Didn't even really expect it. I was going to try and defeat Tamahoo without fighting their army, but we've now defeated their army with the losses on our side really minor. So an absolutely amazing trade that's going to give us a huge upper hand in this war and might be the war ending blow. We will see what happens as a result of this next time.